Hey there guys, I'm SonicGhost, and today we're going to be unboxing the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo's newest home console, which isn't just a home console this time around. This is a hybrid system. You can use it as a console, or you can use it as a portable game system. So this is probably one of the most unique systems to come out in a long time, and I'm very excited to open this up and just see what the Switch has in store for us. So as you can see, I have some accessories for the Switch already. I have a Pro Controller, and I have the charging grip, which is basically the same thing as the grip that's in the Switch box, but it'll allow you to charge up the controllers that you use with the Switch pad itself, the Joy-Cons. So I figured also pick that up if I'm using Joy-Cons for long periods of time. And we have two physical games here, which are The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Bomberman R. Breath of the Wild is also on the Nintendo Wii U, so I could have picked up the Wii U version of this game if I wanted to instead, but I figured it would be best to get this game on the Switch, which is what I did. But enough talk about these games, let's just take a look at the system itself. But before we begin, I want to do a little bit of a comparison here. So, this here is the Switch box, which as you can see, it's a pretty small box. So here is a PlayStation Vita case in comparison. As you can see, the Vita is a lot smaller here, by a lot. But if I can compare the PSP game cases here to a Switch case, as you can see, it's kind of the same size. Switch cases is slightly smaller, so I say that these Switch cases are some of the smallest game cases that you will find out there. Not the smallest, but they're pretty close. I still say this is bigger than like a DS or a 3DS box, but since it's a lot longer, I figured I would showcase the PlayStation portable systems, the PSP and the Vita. So let's just get a lot of this stuff out of the way, because we're not going to be opening the controller and Joy-Cons right now. There's really no need to, because these things are kind of self-explanatory. You get a controller and you get a grip. And the games, once again, are self-explanatory. We'll look at these a little bit later in the video when we actually do a proper review of said Switch. So let's go ahead and take a look at the box itself. So on the front here, you get the artwork of the Joy-Cons and the grip for your standard controller. And then you have the Switch itself in its dock mode here. So basically, this is how you're going to play it as a console. You're going to take the actual system, plug into this dock, and then it output to your television. If you take a look at the back, you'll see that the Switch is operating in a handheld mode, which makes it more like the Wii U gamepad if you use the Wii U. So you have the controllers on the side that you can slide in, or you can use this as a standalone tablet-like device, so these don't have to be on the Switch itself. So we'll be taking a look at that here when we open up the box. If we look around the sides here, you'll just see some Nintendo Switch promotion images that they usually use. It's hard to get those to show up on camera such far away, but you know, I'm just doing my best. And also, before we open it up, on the bottom of the box here, if I can get this into focus, we see everything that comes inside the box, which all of the stuff is kind of self-explanatory. So you get like an HDMI cord, you get the controllers, the system, the AC adapter, stuff like that. But immediately when we open it up, I want to point this out before we look at the actual system. As you can see here, there's instructions of how to set up right on the box itself. You plug it in, set up the system itself, and go from there. So that's pretty cool. Right away, they pretty much tell you what to do. But here is the system. This is basically it right here. So first off, these are the Joy-Con controllers. So these are the little grips that you'll put on the side of the tablet itself, or you can use them standalone. So let me take these both out of their bags here and take a deeper look at these Joy-Cons. So I gotta say, I like how the sticks feel so far. They feel nice and clicky. Buttons are slightly smaller than what I'm used to, but it's something you can get used to. So to get this show up right on camera, these are the Joy-Cons themselves. They look kind of small, so if I rest one in the palm of my hand, as you can see, it just kind of fits in there. And once again, we're going to grab a game case here. We're going to grab the Vita game case. And as you can see, for size comparison, this thing is just slightly smaller than the Vita game case. So they're kind of small, but honestly, on their own, I think that these feel perfectly fine in two hands, in like a two-hand method like this. That was my biggest fear with these. When I was first seeing these controllers shown off, I just thought they'd be too small. On their own, this is honestly too small for me. So you'll be holding a controller like this. Has some buttons here on the top as well, of each side. But I think this is a little too small for me personally. It's good to use quickly, but if I want to play a game seriously for a long period of time, I don't think I'd want to play this sideways. But each Joy-Con does have different things. Like this one has a home button on it, so this will take you back to the home menu. This one here has a little indent in the bottom, which I believe is supposed to be for the amiibos. That's the NFC reader. You have your shoulder buttons here on the top of each Joy-Con. You got this. Actually, I don't even know what these are. This here is like a little D-pad thing above the face buttons, and then this here is a little minus. Actually, I think that's the plus and minus button. So start and select. But I think that's enough look at the actual controllers. Let's look at the system, because I'm really interested in this one. So this is the main powerhouse. Even though it comes with a dock, the Switch itself is this tablet. So it looks and feels pretty nice so far. I do like it. On the back here, we have a little kickstand, which if I can get that out, you can just use this and set it down on a flat surface, although this is probably one of the worst examples. No, it works. So as you can see, it's standing up here. So put that on the table, and you can go ahead and use it that way. Right here looks like that's the micro SD card slot, so you can expand storage with that, which I'm definitely going to want to do. You have speakers here on the bottom of the system. You also have the charging port, which is a USB Type-C connection. I'm extremely happy Nintendo went USB-C because that makes this system extremely compatible with so many different chargers and battery banks and cables. It does not matter what you use, and I really like that. Up here, on the very top of the system, you have the game card slot. So we put your physical cartridges, you get your headphone slot. Looks like some vents here on the top. Got volume buttons and a power button from the looks of things. So yeah, now let's go ahead and slide these Joy-Cons into the system. So one just goes in just like this. Snaps into place. Sounds pretty good to me. Take the other one, snap it into the other side. There you go. That's nice and satisfying. And this feels pretty comfortable in my hands like this, so it looks like a lot bigger now, but let me just, for size comparison, this here is the Wii U gamepad, and this is the Switch. So while they look pretty similar with the Joy-Cons attached, here's your thickness comparison. This thing is way thinner. The Wii U gamepad is very, very thick, while the Switch is very, very thin. Plus, the screens, huge difference as well. The Wii U gamepad and the Switch screen, there's a big difference in resolution. They're about the same size from what I'm seeing here, but this has a 720p screen, while the gamepad here has a 480p screen. And while the Wii U gamepad is not bad in resolution, some things can look a little blocky, so hopefully this will not have that same problem. But that's enough of this. Let's go ahead and continue on with the rest of the contents here in the box. So I believe this here is the charging grip, or the grip itself, which I was right. So now let's take off the Joy-Cons, which I should just slide right up. It's going to probably be hard for me to do holding it sideways, so let me just do this proper. Okay, I figured it out here. You can't just slide them out, so if you try to slide them out, they won't move at all, so that's really good. They won't just fall out if you're shaking the system. There is a button at the very top of each Joy-Con, and if I press that, then it releases the system. And I actually turned it on by doing that too, so I must have held the power button by accident. So we're going to turn that off for now. Well, I guess it doesn't want to turn off. It's like, please put the Joy-Cons in. Even though I'm not wanting to right now, because I want to do some other stuff with the Joy-Cons. I want to connect them to the grip. Although it's making sound effects, so that's interesting. Yeah, I legitimately cannot turn this off right now, so it wants to continue to set up. So this will be flashing for now. Please ignore said flashing screen. It will be there in the bottom corner. That's interesting, though, how it pretty much demands you to continue to set up. I haven't seen a console do that, so just take the grips, slide it right on into the controller itself, and they're turning on. I actually see green indicator lights on both of these. And once you slide them right in, green indicator lights go on the actual system, and this feels pretty nice. I like the feel of this so far. It's a little bit smaller than your standard type of controller, but honestly, this is not terrible. So I can easily see me like throwing this into a bag with the Switch and using this for out and about gaming. I do like that. So we'll put this to the side here. Check out the rest. We have the... I keep on getting accessories to take a look at with the dang controllers. There's so much to look at with this. It's insane. So this here is not only your wrist strap, but also on the top of each Joy-Con, there are 2 extra little buttons up here, but they're kind of hard to get to. So that's what this would be for. So you just take this little accessory and you slide her in the Joy-Con. Now indicator light goes on here, and the buttons are way bigger. And they're way clickier too. So that does feel a lot better in my hands. I'm still a little uncomfortable with it getting this close together for the buttons and the stick, but that is better in my opinion. Plus, you know, gotta have that safety. So yeah, that's what these little railings are for the Joy-Con controllers. It's for not only safety, but to extend your shoulder buttons. But also trying to get these things out, they're really tight, so it's not like you're gonna accidentally hit this button and it'll slide out, because I really have to pull this thing out. It did not want to come off at all. So it's a very secured connection, which is good. So I'm putting this back together. Here's the other little railing slash wrist strap piece. So I'm not going to put that one on. You've pretty much seen what that does. So next up here we have an HDMI cord, which this is really good to have, but I'm not going to be using their included cord because in my setup it's not long enough. I had to buy a 15-foot cable because where I'm putting this Switch, it's nowhere near my television, so we're going to be using something completely different. This is the AC adapter, nothing special here, but I just wanted to show that's a USB-C cable, which is really helpful because I can easily buy a bulk of USB-C cables and get AC adapter heads, and as long as with the right voltage, that will work with the Switch as well, which is really nice. I heard this thing working with battery banks, which is good because if I'm out and about, I'd plug this thing into a battery bank to give it a little bit of extra juice. It won't give a permanent gaming on the go, but maybe we can squeeze in that extra 20 minutes. And it's both the dock and the Switch use USB-C, so if that thing one day dies, it won't be too hard to find a replacement because it's going to be very cheap. I should also mention the last other thing in here besides the dock is just some paperwork. So if you want their health and safety stuff, there you go. I don't really need that. Let's get this box out of the way with all its goodies. And get out the dock. So this is it. This is what you put your Switch into to get it to work as a home console. It's extremely hard to see, but inside here you got a little bit of a port that's sticking out. That's your USB-C connection, which will take the system and overclock it so it'll run in 1080p on your television, because this thing here can only do 720p like I mentioned earlier. The dock will allow it to run at its fullest potential, giving it more horsepower because it has, I guess, some extra guts inside of this thing as well. So that's why you can run it in 1080p on your television, and games will probably run a little bit better. There's a little flap here in the back. You open it up, and you got your extra connections back here, an AC adapter, USB, and HDMI out. So you can put a hidden like USB thing back here, say like a LAN adapter or something, or a thumb drive, and just hide it back here. It's also USB 3, as you can see by the blue coloration of the port, which is nice. Then on the side here, you also have 2 more USB ports, so got a total of 3 USBs on the system. That's 1 less than the Wii U, so I'm not sure how that would work with some extra accessories that use multiple USB ports, but I honestly think that's going to be enough. So let's just take this Switch now, as it's telling me to plug in the controllers, and instead of doing that, let's plug it into the dock, and it's in. So it sits in here nice and firmly, but it's not the most stable connection, because if I hold it upside down like this, as you can see, here's the screen. I'm going to barely move it, and it slides out. So it's not the most secure connection in the world. but at the same time, it's enough so that the thing can communicate with the dock and do what it needs to, which is pretty much all it's designed for, so I'm fine with that. So that is everything. I'm going to go ahead and just open up two more things really quick. So we'll open up Breath of the Wild, and then we'll open up the Pro Controller here. So we'll go ahead and take care of the Pro Controller first, just because I've already teased it, so I'm going to go ahead and show it at least. So it's basically in comparison to the Joy-Con grips inside of, well, the Joy-Cons itself inside the grip, I should say. It's going to be compared to that. It's going to be, I believe, a much bigger controller, so it'll feel a little bit better in the hands. But besides that, it's going to have the same button layout, and it's going to basically function the same. So, let's go ahead, open this, and take the controller out. So first things first, it comes with another cable here. This is another USB-C cable. So USB-C to A, which is good because the controller as well can use USB-C, which means cables will be extremely easy to find for this device as well, and also work with the same cable that charges your Switch, which is really convenient. So, got a little bit of film here on the top, so I'm going to point that out immediately. The top is a glossy black finish. Why? Like, it looks nice, but it's a fingerprint magnet. So, I don't know. It's not really looking like it's attracting fingerprints that fast right now, but in the future it probably could. So I'm loving, and I mean absolutely loving how this feels in my hands so far. It feels very much like an Xbox controller, like a 360 or One controller. It feels so much like the original Pro Controller for the Wii U, which I have right here actually. But here's the Switch Pro Controller, and here's the Wii U Pro Controller. And besides the button layout and the stick layout, it's very similar. The Pro Controller for the Wii U is slightly thinner, but in terms of comfort, I'm feeling very similar comfort levels between the controllers. I actually prefer the Switch controller a little bit more because Pro Controller here on the Wii U has these little bumps here on the grip. So while it's molded okay in your hands, they can kind of get in your way. But with the Switch Pro Controller, that doesn't exist. It's just slightly curved upwards, which I feel really, really good holding this in my hands. It just feels very, very natural, so I like that. But let's go ahead and finally take a look at the last thing and then jump into the actual review part of this video. This is probably going to be one of the longest unboxing / review videos I have, and I should do this now as a disclaimer. I won't be able to do a 100% proper review of the Switch right now. I'll be able to do it to the best of my abilities, but not everything is going to be out for the Switch for a couple months. There's going to be a lot of games and features still coming to the system, so I'm going to be doing my best to keep up with the Switch stuff as I'm working on this review video, but what I put out there, keep in mind, it's not fully complete yet. So, I'm going to open up Breath of the Wild here, and as you can see, there's pretty much only one thing in here, which is just the game card. And it is tiny, and I mean tiny. So, just for comparison's sake, this here is an SD card. If I put the game on top, it's just slightly smaller than a normal SD card. That is ridiculously small. I can't believe it. It's kind of the same size as a Vita card, honestly, so that's pretty interesting. But, even though I have the Freedom Wars case right here, the cartridge is nowhere near me, so I'm not going to be tearing that apart just to get a cartridge out. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything right there. Although, I will point out this. In the Switch boxes, it looks like they have these little grips here for like a manual or some kind of insert, so I don't know what that would be used for, honestly, because there's nothing in here. So, I'm not sure what that will be used for at all, but yeah, that's the game. Pretty simple. But yeah, that is basically everything that I wanted to go ahead and take a look at here with the Switch. So, without any further ado, let's jump into the review portion of this video and see what the Switch has in store for us. So I've been playing around with my Nintendo Switch now for quite some time, and I'm ready to go ahead and give my thoughts on the console. So let's go ahead and take a look first at the multiple ways you can go ahead and use the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch isn't just a home game console, it's also a handheld game console, which makes the system very unique in its own regard. The Nintendo Switch has a 6.2-inch 720p multi-touch screen, which is really nice because for this size device, a 720p resolution looks great. The Nintendo Switch is a really nice looking system when you're playing it in handheld mode. I had no complaints about the screen whatsoever. The brightness is pretty nice, the resolution looks great on this size screen, and overall the picture is very detailed on the Switch screen. It's a very nice, pleasant display. And playing in handheld mode, you have a couple different ways you can go ahead and use the system too. You can play using the Joy-Cons slided into the sides of the system and play it like a tablet or the Wii U gamepad, and that's a really nice thing you can do because now you're playing your Switch as a handheld system, and it's really comfortable too. And it's not that big of a system, honestly. You can fit the Switch in your pocket. It's a little bit bigger than a 3DS XL, but it's still portable enough for you to take the system wherever you go, which is really nice. But if you don't want to play your system as a handheld, but you still want to take it out of the dock, Nintendo does include a kickstand on the back of the Switch system, which you can go ahead and use to prop up the system on a table, which allows you to play more tabletop-styled gaming, and that's pretty nice. I will say though, the stand on the back of the Switch isn't really the greatest thing in the world because it doesn't go out all too far, so the angle that the Switch sits on isn't really the most comfortable angle for long gaming sessions. It's really good if you're eye level with the system, but if you're not eye level with the Switch, the stand doesn't go back far enough for you to have a comfortable experience with it. But if you're going to be playing your Switch far away from you, this is where the dock comes into play because you're going to want to drop your system into the dock and play this thing on your television. While the screen on the Switch is only 720p, the dock will allow you to output in full 1080p HD to your television, and some games will run better in the dock mode from what Nintendo is saying as well, because the dock itself has some extra hardware inside of it, allowing you to get more power out of the Switch. So while the Switch dock isn't the console per se, it's a piece of the console that is very important to the system. Without the dock, you're not going to get the full performance out of your Nintendo Switch. So this dock will allow you to use your system as your traditional console because you'll be able to play with your Joy-Cons unrailed from the system wherever you want. You can put it into the Joy-Con grip, you can play it by itself, you can use the Pro Controller, and it feels just like your average console at that point, and it's a very nice experience. It's one of the smallest consoles I've ever seen though. Put together in total, even with the Joy-Cons railed onto the Switch when you're playing the system in its dock mode, it's really not that big of a system whatsoever. It's just a little bit bigger than a Wii U gamepad. And that's pretty impressive if you ask me. They've really found a way to take all the power of a Xbox One, for example, and compress that all into this very small form factor system. So you're not going to have an issue finding a space to put your Switch. The only downside I feel to this kind of method of a console is that you need to make sure you put your Switch in a more open area. That way you can easily access it to take the system out of the dock and use it in its handheld mode. So you can't put this behind a TV, for example, and forget about it if you like to use the system in its handheld mode as well, because then you're going to have a hard time getting to it. But looking at the game catalog for the Switch, there's not that many games out for it right now, but the games that are out for the Switch are all really good and pretty fun to play. The system has a really strong launch title with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and it's probably the game I put in the most time on my Switch, most definitely, and probably one of the games I played the most in the Zelda series. But besides that, right now there's not too much else to play on the Switch. There are great indie titles out there like Shovel Knight and Snipper Clips, for example, but in terms of first-party games, you're really only going to find Zelda and 1-2-Switch right now, which are good, fun games to play, don't get me wrong, but right now, games are still coming out with the system. We have Mario Kart 8 coming in the next few weeks, we have Splatoon 2 coming this summer, Mario Odyssey coming out in the holiday season, so games are coming, but they're not coming out right away. So while reviewing the system,
not everything is going to be out for it. There's some features also missing from the Switch at this time too. For example, the Switch does not have a web browser built into the system whatsoever. You can go ahead and share your game screenshots on sites like Facebook or Twitter, but that's the closest you're going to get to surfing the web on the Switch, is via one of those two websites. Besides that, there's no other way to connect to the internet outside of playing games, so you might see an update sometime in the future where Nintendo does add a web browser to the system. Another thing missing from the Switch right now is a Virtual Console service. Nintendo has announced that they will be doing Virtual Console on the Switch, but right now there really isn't any Virtual Console titles. The closest we have to Virtual Console on the Switch is a couple of Neo Geo games that have been released on the Nintendo eShop. And if this is how the Virtual Console is going to be set up, then it'll pretty much be a pleasant experience, very similar to the Wii, Wii U, and 3DS. So we'll see how that goes in the future, but right now we don't even have Virtual Console on the Switch. You can play your games online on the Nintendo Switch, and you can use either a wired or a wireless connection on the system, but keep in mind the first couple months you can actually play your Switch games online for free, but later on in fall of this year, you're going to have to pay for your online. Thanks to how Nintendo's been trying to improve on their servers, they're implementing the same pay online strategy that Microsoft and Sony have been doing for a couple years now. And a lot of people are a little upset about this, but I personally don't mind this change as much, because if they use this money to improve their online servers, then this will make the online gaming experience much better in my opinion. They've said that when you're paying online, you'll get a free Virtual Console game once a month, but besides that, there hasn't really been too much talk about the online. There's been a little bit of a price discussion saying that online for a year on the Switch will cost less than $30, but there hasn't been too much confirmed about the online functionality of the Switch just yet. But from my time spent playing with the Switch online, with the few games that have online support right now, it's been a pretty pleasant experience, but it has depended on game to game. When I played the Splatoon 2 Global Test Fire, I really had no problems whatsoever playing that game online, and it was a very nice, pleasant experience. When I played Super Bomberman R online, that was a different story, because Super Bomberman R has a peer-to-peer online setup, where if one person has a bad internet connection, that affects the entire game. And honestly, that's my least favorite type of online gaming. And if the Switch in general uses peer-to-peer, then that's going to be a problem. But from what we're seeing so far, that doesn't really seem to be a problem with Nintendo servers, more like a problem with game developers. So it's up to the developer and how they're going to handle online. So right now, there's not really too much we can say about how good or bad the Switch's online will be. But from what I experienced so far, it's been a very pleasant to okay experience. It's just going to depend on the game developer and what they choose to do for their online games. If you're buying a Switch right now, you have to remember this is early adoption period, so you're not going to have too much to do with your system. But the stuff you can do with it, it's still a very enjoyable experience, and I've really enjoyed playing with my Switch so far. It's been a system I played almost every single day ever since I got it, and its release in March. And that's saying a lot, because I haven't played a system this frequently since I got my Wii U back in 2014. So that's a really good, strong selling point for the Switch so far. If you pick up games for it, you're going to be playing the Switch a lot because of its versatile usage, along with its comfort factor too, because the Switch itself is a pretty comfortable system to play when you're in handheld mode, and it's also a very nice experience in its console mode. And speaking of comfort, let's go ahead and take a look at the controllers, because there are a lot of different ways you can play the Switch thanks to the different control types you have. So let's first look at the Joy-Cons, because the Joy-Cons are the heart of the Switch itself. In fact, the Joy-Cons are so important, they make up the logo for the system. So these are a very iconic look already for the Switch. And honestly, they're very nice controllers, but they're just a little too small. When you're playing with the Joy-Cons in each hand, it doesn't really feel that bad. They feel pretty comfortable in one-hand use. But when you start turning them onto their side and using it kind of like a Wii remote, then that's when you start noticing the smaller form factor of these controllers to be a little bit of an issue, especially if you have big hands. These controllers are more meant for quick use, so if you're out and about playing with your Switch and you want to play a multiplayer game with a friend you run into, that's what these controllers are meant to be used for. They're meant to be used as a quick controller to hand to your friend to play when you're out and about. So when you're at home, you're probably going to want to hand someone either a second set of Joy-Cons, or you want to go ahead and give them a Pro controller to use instead, because using the Joy-Cons on their side aren't the most comfortable due to their small form factor. You can make the Joy-Cons a little more comfortable by sliding on the included wrist strap, which have little riser buttons for the shoulder buttons on the top of the controller, but even that still makes the Joy-Cons feel very small when they're on their side. And speaking of which, this Joy-Con strap, it's not going to be used all too much. Like I said, you have the little riser buttons that are meant to be used to extend the little shoulder buttons on the sides of the Joy-Con, but besides that, this is mainly used as a wrist strap for games that you need it, like 1-2 Switch for example. And speaking of that game, this is the perfect time to go over the stuff that the Joy-Cons have inside of them. So the Joy-Cons have accelerometers and gyroscopes inside of them, which allow you to use these things very similarly to a Wii Remote. So you can shake these things around, you can move them side to side, and they will respond appropriately with their games. And it feels very one-to-one in a lot of the motions, kind of like a Wii Remote Plus does, so it doesn't really feel that inaccurate at all.
It'll all be okay, Switch. Games are coming. You have Breath of the Wild, which is an amazing selling title right now. One of the best selling games in years. Mario Kart 8 will be out soon. Splatoon 2 is coming this summer, and Mario Odyssey will be coming this holiday season. You have plenty of great games. Rest well, my friend.
The right Joy-Con even has a motion IR camera on the bottom of the controller, which this will allow you to do some more advanced movement things with the right Joy-Con, and the only real use I've had of this so far has been one game in 1-2 Switch called Eating Contest, where you hold the Joy-Con up close to your mouth and just start munching away, and the IR camera will recognize your mouth moving. That's pretty much what the IR camera is going to mainly be used for, from what I'm seeing, is motion up close. These Joy-Cons also have a feature Nintendo is advertising as HD Rumble, which is a more improved version of the rumble feature we've already felt in our controllers over the past couple years. And HD Rumble does feel very nice because it's a very accurate rumble telling you where exactly something is. So if you're playing ball count on 1-2 Switch for example, you can feel how many balls are in your box by just moving around the Joy-Con. And it feels very accurate too. So this new version of Rumble does feel very sensitive, and it does feel like how Nintendo has advertised it being the most realistic styled Rumble you'll feel in a game controller that's out on the market right now. It does feel very accurate. The Switch has a screenshot button on its controller, so if you go ahead and press this button, it'll take a quick screenshot of wherever game you're playing, and you can go ahead and share the screenshot to social media sites like Facebook or Twitter, and this will also save to either your Switch's internal memory or a micro SD card if you have one installed into your system. And this is a very useful thing because it allows you to quickly share whatever game you're playing on the fly, and it's kind of similar to the share button on the PlayStation 4. So you can go ahead and quickly take a picture of whatever game you're playing and immediately share it to people on the internet in about a minute's time. This is a very cool little feature to have on the Switch, and it makes gaming even more social now on Nintendo's platform than it was before. Miiverse allow you to take screenshots as well on the Wii or 3DS, but you're mainly limited to posting those screenshots on Miiverse. If you wanted to share these to Facebook or Twitter, you basically have to share the Miiverse post. This time around, you could just take those posts and directly share them to Facebook or Twitter, which is a very nice feature in my opinion. The right Joy-Con also has NFC support, which allows you to use your Amiibos on the Nintendo Switch. Now, because there's not too many games out there that have Amiibo support, I can't really test this feature all too much, but the games I play with Amiibo support, like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, it works perfectly fine, although I'm not the biggest fan of the NFC reader being built into the joystick on the right Joy-Con, because I feel like it's a little finicky to get the Amiibos to work when you're placing it on a round surface. It takes me a couple tries when I'm trying to tap the Amiibo to my right Joy-Con, but once you get it in the right position, then the Joy-Con will recognize the amiibo just like how it would on the 3DS or Wii U, and I've had no trouble loading in my amiibos to Breath of the Wild. But if you don't want to play with all these motion controls and don't want to play with the Joy-Cons separated, you have the Joy-Con grip that you can go ahead and use, because this thing basically turns your Joy-Cons into a more traditional style controller. It's a little bit of a smaller controller thanks to how the Joy-Cons buttons are all shaped and how the grip itself is a little more compact, but this is a very nice accessory to have if you're more comfortable with that traditional style control scheme of having the controller all in one unit in both your hands. And I also find that the grip itself is small enough for you to throw into a bag with your Switch, so if you want to play with a more traditional style controller on the go, then you take your Joy-Con grip with you as well and you're good to go. I have played a couple games on the Switch using the grip, and I had no real complaints about it, besides the already mentioned the Joy-Cons are a little too small complaint that I mentioned earlier in the video. But if you're not the biggest fan of the Joy-Cons, or even using the Joy-Cons in the grip accessory, then you can go ahead and get yourself a Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which is a more traditional styled controller. This feels very similar to an Xbox One controller in my opinion, because it's very big and comfortable, it fits very nicely in your hands, and it's that very traditional button layout that we have on Xbox controllers. So this is my preferred controller to use on the Switch right now. It just feels right to me. It feels like I can play this thing for hours on end and have no complaints. It's a very great controller. And this thing has a lot of things inside of it as well. The Pro Controller has an accelerometer inside of it along with a gyroscope, just like how the Joy-Cons do, and it also has NFC support, so you can use your amiibos with the Pro Controller as well. Which this is nice because the Pro Controller that you can buy for the Wii U did not have NFC support or an accelerometer, so you still had to use the gamepad for a lot of different games on that system. But with the Pro Controller for the Switch, you can basically use this thing with any game that supports both of the Joy-Cons as your more traditional style controller, which is very nice because the Pro Controller on the Switch itself, having all these features, doesn't make it the cheapest thing in the world. It's a $70 controller. So you're paying a premium for this controller, but it's worth every penny in the long run. This thing is a fully decked out controller and allows you to do so many different things, which is really nice. And it's, like I mentioned earlier, my preferred way to play these games right now on my Switch. Overall, I've really enjoyed my time with the Switch, and it's a very fun console to play around with thanks to its many different ways of playing the system. Being able to use it as a traditional style game console in your living room, and then turning around, taking the system out of its dock and playing it as a handheld game console, it's been a very nice experience, and a lot of my time spent with the Switch has been in its handheld mode, just because of how comfortable an experience it is to play the Switch in handheld mode. Now, thanks to not many games being out for the Switch right now, along with some features still coming to the system, I can't really recommend the Switch to everyone right now, just because this is an early adoption time. So if you know for a fact that you're going to play a lot of stuff on a Switch, then I can definitely recommend picking one of these up. But if you're waiting for later titles to come out like Splatoon 2 or Mario Odyssey for example, then you're best off waiting a little while before picking up a Switch. Thanks to the device not having nearly as many games right now as other systems, you're going to be waiting a while to be playing a lot of AAA titles on the system. But this is expected with a console launch because this happens with basically every system for the first few months, so it's pretty much a decision of what you want to play on the system. But if you decide to pick up a Switch, you will not be disappointed. I've been very happy with my Switch so far, and I know for a fact I'm going to be getting a lot of playtime out of this thing with more games come out for it. When Mario Kart and Splatoon 2 are out for the system, I already know I'm going to be playing a lot of my Switch. Thank you all for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you guys next time.